Welcome to Proof Points, a podcast by Latham High-Tech Seeds. I'm product manager Steve Sick, and each week I will be interviewing a Latham team members throughout our territories. We'll have discussions on agronomy, hot topics in the industry, and things we're seeing across Latham country. Family owned and farm proven for more than 75 years, Latham Seeds is growing strong. Today we're here with Aaron Steenhook. How are you today, Aaron?
Doing good, Steve. Doing good.
Good.
We got some rain here over the weekend, so everybody's happy and things are coming out of the ground.
That's always that's a good start to have rain after it's planted. So,
Absolutely.
Aaron, your territory includes the southern half of Iowa. What's the one thing you want our listeners to know about your territory?
I think one of the biggest things I would say is we're diverse. I think a lot of southern Iowa kind of gets a bad rap for there's a lot of livestock and hills and chopped up fields and so on, but we've got a really good soil base with all that. It lends to a lot of diverse operations and a lot of unique opportunities from the seed side of things and working with different producers. So, I would say that's probably one of the biggest things that I enjoy and probably one of the strong points I would say for agriculture in the southern part of Iowa as well.
Oh, good. How does Latham help you build on that diversity?
Probably the biggest thing is the diverse portfolio, genetics, trait packages, having the ability for different chemical programs on the soybean side of things, silage specific things for livestock producers, being able to offer them, some more direct line genetics that help their bottom line, alfalfa, for the cattle guys as well as becoming, a bigger and bigger deal with some of the commodity prices and
Right.
and buying some of those byproducts. It's becoming cheaper again to grow your own protein versus buying it. So we've got all those options, and it's nice to be able to go to those producers and help them with their their operations, in whatever capacity they need.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. So, being that with the diversity, multiple technologies, different product or platforms and such, what's the goal for your territory, and how is Latham Seeds helping you achieve that goal?
Yeah, I think the goal is to help as many producers attain their goals as we can. Everybody's got different goals. And so that's different for each operation. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is help them attain their business goals through ROI driven products, performance on the farm,
Mhm.
better weed control, better management strategies, different genetics and trait platforms like we were talking, just being able to help producers in whatever capacity we can, to further their businesses and their livelihood. So at the end of the day, that's the goal.
Right. No, that's a very notable goal. I mean, achieving success and helping others grow is a very noble goal. There's no doubt about that. One thing I've always looked at too is you don't always have to be the number one yielder in order to bring the best ROI and that to a grower's operation.
Oh, absolutely. It's a combination of things, right? Um, fitting,
Mhm.
silage tonnage, for example, can be one thing. Things are price driven at different times, but at the same time, if you can maximize some other management strategies that
Right.
they're using, whether it's hog manure or, cover crops, no-till, conventional tillage, different soil types, if you can match your products, and the things that we have at our disposal to their operation to tie the whole picture in for them at the end of the day. That's what really matters.
No, that's good. I think that's a really good outlook. Trying to get everything together in once, a total picture view, is really the key to success, in my opinion. So now that we're halfway through May, you said you've been getting some good rains here this past few days. How's your territory progressing overall? Are we on schedule? Are we a little behind?
No, I would say we're sitting really well. I would say as a whole, maybe even we're slightly ahead of schedule. A lot of guys are um, either wrapping up or wrapped up with planting.
Hmm.
Maybe have a field or two to finish after these rains. Um, and so we're really sitting in a good spot. There's a good chunk of the crop that is emerging this week, or started emerging last week. We haven't had any really heavy rainfalls that's going to cause any major issues, with maybe the exception of a few spots here and there. So the rainfall we have had has been very beneficial to, good even emergence. Soybeans are coming out of the ground, no crusting issues. Everything's looking really pretty good at this point in time. So if we can continue to get some timely moisture throughout the summer and into grain fill here, we should be setting up for a pretty good crop in these areas. We're subsoil wise, we're on the dry end of things for sure,
Hmm.
and so we're
Right.
going to need some consistent rain, throughout the summer, to keep things, looking as good as they are. But we're definitely sitting in a good spot.
Good. Good. That's good to hear. As genetics and traits and everything have improved throughout the years, and we go with our average rate of genetic gain and such, how has that affected your territory? Are you seeing that average rate of gain increase every year, year over year, or is it really sporadic according to the weather?
No, I think we're definitely seeing those genetic gains, and I would say maybe even um, being benefited maybe even a little bit more than most in this area.
Hmm.
A lot of those genetic gains have helped with stress tolerance, drought tolerance, and keeping that. We've increased the yield ceiling, we'll say,
Hmm.
with those genetics, but I think we've also done a really good job of increasing the yield floor, and doing a better job of being more consistent, either through more stress, less rain, whatever you want to call it. And so I would say the genetic gains have probably benefited us more so than most, through some of those
Right.
rolling, more variable, stressy areas. And so it's been a definite help for this area.
Yeah, with the diversity in geography and farming practices within your area, it's really makes a difference. In some cases, a failure is, only achieving 200 bushels to the acre, and obviously, in your case, that's definitely not the instance.
Yep. Yeah, we've definitely got some lower yield capacity areas,
Hmm.
that guys would wonder, why do we farm that, but in a good year we can grow 220, 230 bushel corn in those areas, where guys used to have 120 bushel APHs, right?
Hmm. Right.
But even like last year, we were well short on rainfall through some of those stressier areas, and talking to some of the guys that have been farming for 20, 30 years, back then, they'd have had 50 or 60 bushel corn, right? It would have been a complete, or less, maybe even in a year like we had last year. And they're still pulling, 160, 170 bushel corn off of a lot of
Hmm.
those fields that had, 15-year APHs around 140. So even the low end of things is well above what the old APHs used to be.
I think you point out a very good thing that most people don't think of. You always look for the top end of the ceiling, but we always don't look at the floor being raised. And I think you bring up a
Absolutely.
good point that we've really done a good job throughout the industry doing that.
Yep, and with cost of production, machinery, land values going up, rent values going up, and everything, that's huge for some of these producers that do operate on some of that. We'll call it some of the more marginal
Right.
ground, right? That's the only thing that allows those guys to continue to farm those acres, right? Because if we were still
Mhm.
growing, 125, 130 bushel APH corn on that ground, it wouldn't be feasible anymore.
Right. No, that's a good point. So now that we've kind of heard the status of your territory and kind of how things are starting so far, I know you'd mentioned, if we continue to get a few more timely rains, what else do you see in the crystal ball for your territory for 2023?
Yeah, if I had a crystal ball for that, you and I wouldn't be sitting here talking,
That's true.
Steve,
Good point.
The stand counts look good. There's a few things like on the early side that were a little bit uneven, but overall, the crop has come out of the ground really well, and I would say pretty even as well. And so, I think a couple things that are going to be key is just watching your weed control in the
Mhm.
soybeans, making sure that we're maintaining ahead of those, staying ahead of those things. Maybe some in-season nitrogen management with some of the drier weather this spring and last fall. I know that seems a little bit backwards, um, but there's some questions on adherence, in the soil profiles with did we have enough moisture when we put our anhydrous on or something,
Right.
and so doing some in-season nitrogen management I think could be key this year. As well as probably one of the bigger things we're going to have to watch is tar spot. It wasn't bad through this territory last year, but it definitely showed up, and it showed up late. And
Mhm.
so we've got a lot of inoculum, and it's going to be a little bit new to us, learning how
Right.
to manage it in this area. And so I think guys are going to have to learn to keep an eye out for that, fungicide timing wise. Do we
Mhm.
need to make some of those later season management changes, that we haven't done before? Guys are getting more in a regular habit of spraying a fungicide.
Right.
Um, but does everybody go to at least one fungicide? And if we have some known corn on corn or, known heavier pressure areas, is there some guys that need to switch to a two-pass fungicide program, to
Mhm.
help stave off some of that tar spot and so on? So there's going to be some interesting things to keep an eye on this year.
Yeah, there definitely will be. I mean, you brought up tar spot, which is, like you mentioned, it's a very new and upcoming disease for Iowa and the West. And it really, by the time you see the tar spot lesions out in the field, it's already too late, unfortunately, to spray by then. So, I mean, I think you're spot on when you say, late season fungicide application, right at tasseling before. Anytime along that lines that we can keep that plant healthy as we can, fantastic opportunity. So one of the things you mentioned too was stand counts. What do you think about what Latham's offering as far as seed treatments go?
Our seed treatment portfolio is phenomenal, and I'm going to speak more so on the soybean side of things,
Uh,
especially right now. We deal with a lot of heavy clay-based soils
right.
that can be tighter and tend to have more of those seedling diseases, and so being able to offer that proprietary seed treatment that really, in my mind, is second to none as far as emergence, and keeping that seed, healthy and that seedling early, keeping it healthy as well has really improved some of our soybean yields. The other thing I think it helps with is as some of these operations get bigger, more and more guys have two or three planters, um, and we're getting more bold on planting beans early and earlier all the time. And
Right.
so doing anything and everything we can to protect that soybean in those colder soils is really allowing guys to maximize some good yields or better yields even I should say on soybeans, getting them in the ground earlier and letting them flower, closer and longer to that summer solstice, and
Right.
really capturing as much sunlight potential as we can, has really been a good thing for us.
Well, that's a good point. One final thing, you mentioned about capturing the longest days we can and expanding your growing season. Have you seen your growing season change throughout the years? I mean, when it used to be, were you used to planting 105-day corn, now it's 110? Is that what's kind of you're seeing across your territory?
Yeah, I think we've seen a little bit of a shift. Um, the heat I think is pushed a little bit further north. It
North.
used to be the northern half of my territory. A lot of those guys grew 103 to 111 or 12-day corn.
Well,
And they really didn't have all that much in the 110 plus, as far as their portfolio was concerned, because it was wet, right? It yielded well, but
right.
it was just wet.
Yeah.
Now that northern tier of the territory is going all the way to 115, even 116 day in
Wow.
some cases where they have dryers. A larger percentage of the portfolio is in that 110 plus. And, the Southern Territory used to be 114 day. And we've got some guys that are, approaching 117, 118, and even a few that are trying 120 days. So I think we've got I don't know that we're necessarily any warmer on the front side, but we're a little bit more bold on getting the crop in when it's a little cooler, a little earlier. But our backside window, I think, is staying warmer longer into October and November after everything is filled out, and that's allowing some of those fuller season products to dry down in the field more so than they used to, and that's why we're seeing a little bit of a shift and change to a little bit fuller season, and it is in turn carrying more yield capacity as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. As we all know, I mean, the fuller season hybrids planted in zone or just a little bit north of zone will definitely capture your most yield potential beyond a doubt. Are you seeing the same thing on soybeans, Aaron?
Actually, no. There's actually been a little bit of a shift opposite in soybeans, I would say, as a whole. And I don't know that it's necessarily due to weather. But with the earlier planting, I think we're getting more of a photosynthetic gain from the shorter season soybeans. And so guys have actually shifted a little bit earlier on the soybeans in general, I would say. Because of that, they like to get the soybeans out in September, October when it's nice. You're more likely to have some warmer days, drier weather, and they can really, plow through the soybeans and then move on to corn, a little bit later on, let it stand and dry down in the field. And just kind of have changed their harvest mentality a little bit from that perspective. Yep.
No, that makes total sense. I can fully see that process, and I was figuring you were going to go there. That get the soybeans off early, then get started on corn. Obviously, soybeans are a lot less weather forgiving than what corn is.
Yep, absolutely.
So now, well, thank you, Aaron. And with that, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Proof Points. Thanks for tuning in and have a great week.